Join me now from Texas, representing District 1 in the Lone Star State, Congressman Louie Gohmert. Congressman, it's great to see you.
Great to see you. It's great to be with you. Thank you, Stephanie.
Congressman, before we dive into all the details, I want to find out how you're doing first. I know that you were diagnosed with coronavirus a couple weeks ago. So do you now test negative for it, and how are you feeling?
Well, I haven't had the most recent test, but I've been symptom-free for a week now. So I'm doing extremely well. The hydroxychloroquine, the zinc, the Z-Pack, azithromycin, vitamin D3, vitamin C, a steroid nebulizer, all of those made a great deal of difference. And I'm doing extremely well, remarkably well. I just wish everybody had the chance to have their doctor prescribe what they think is best. So I'm doing well, and I'm glad to be back with you.
Yeah, and you just said that you took hydroxychloroquine, which is one of the videos that was being censored on Twitter and some of the other social media sites. What's your reaction to that, considering you actually took it?
Well, that's why I say it is really tragic that a bunch of bozos who are not physicians, they're not doctors of any kind, they're high-tech people, they're liberals, they're alt-left people, and they decided to get between doctors and their patients. It is rather tragic. There was a study that came out last week indicating that countries that have used hydroxychloroquine as a regimen, it's not normally effective by itself, but that have used that have 79% less fatality rate than we do in the United States. I heard last week a breathless report that remdesivir has been shown it can cut symptoms from 15 days to 11 days. With all the billions that drug is costing, and all they can do is cut 15 to 11 days. I mean, doctors need to be able to consider the full package. And I've talked to doctors across the country that have saved thousands of lives and made so many more comfortable by using the hydroxychloroquine regimen. And it's just a shame that some places doctors are not allowed to help their patients.
Yeah, it's a total disgrace. There should be, doctors should be able to debate the pros and cons of hydroxychloroquine, and as you pointed out, it should be between a doctor and a patient. But I'm glad to hear that you're doing well. Now, I want to jump over to our original topic here, which is, of course, predictably, Democrats are up in arms over President Trump's executive order. And, I mean, that was predictable. We knew that was coming. But there are some Republicans who have voiced discomfort regarding President Trump's 4 executive orders, obviously meant to address the economic fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. Where do you stand on this? Are you uncomfortable with the use of a pen and a phone, if you will?
Well, I'm not a fan of executive orders, but since they've been used so widely and nowhere with more power he didn't have than with President Obama, it is unfortunate that Pelosi and the Democrats, Schumer et al., that they had decided that they believe that it's better for them politically if people continue to suffer as much as possible unless they get every Democrat-oriented firm flux with money between now and the election. And I'm grateful the president and Mitch McConnell have not caved to some very outrageous demands. There are some things we need to do as a Congress. And like I said, Stephanie, I'm not a big fan of executive orders, but something did need to be done here. And the president really showed the Democrats who are being obstructionists, hoping that the more havoc that's created in America, the better it is for them politically. He showed them that he is not going to be kept from doing what is needed to be done here in America. And by the way, back in 2008, I was not a fan of TARP. It was a huge mistake, and I didn't think we should have been putting hundreds of billions of dollars in the hands of the greedy on Wall Street that brought us to the brink of ruin. And that's when I came up with the payroll tax holiday, and I was proposing, instead of giving all that money to Wall Street, let's let people keep it in their own paychecks. And I am glad to see that's resonating with so many economists that I respect. I couldn't get the Republican leadership to get on board as they should have back then, and nor the Democrats in the 2 years after. But it's still an effective way of getting help by letting people keep the money they themselves have earned. So as someone that came up with the idea in 2008, I love the idea.
Yeah, and you said you're not a fan of executive orders. I'm not a fan either, and I remember criticizing former President Barack Obama every time he used the pen and the phone, and it's something that we railed against at the time. But really, there was just kind of no option. I mean, we were already a week into August, and there was no congressional deal with the White House. There was no really plan to help the American people who, through no fault of their own, were suffering because businesses are closed. And it's not necessarily all Congress's fault. I mean, this is at the state level as well, because each state and each city and county are making up their own rules to keep things shut down and not reopen. That being said, the Democrats are considering challenging President Trump's executive orders, which, you know, I think it's kind of unfair, because President Trump, it looked like he was trying to do a balance here. He didn't totally eliminate the federal unemployment benefits, which is what Democrats were really up in arms about, the $600. So President Trump promised $400, which is $200 more than the Republican plan originally, even though we heard McConnell suggest that maybe he was willing to budge on that. And I didn't even think that was a terrible idea. I know that money doesn't grow on trees, and we're concerned about, you know, our economic future as a country, but this is short term. And for people who need to make ends meet at the end of the month, I think this was something that was really important for them.
I agree with you. And it's important to understand, though, differences between Obama's executive orders and this executive order. Obama was just creating legislation out of memos and executive orders like DACA, and he had no authority to do that, despite what some of the weird courts have said. But when we talk about money and moving money from one area to another, the executive branch has been given incredible flexibility. I don't like it, but when Congress stopped having line item appropriations, what some people call earmarks, we gave away a tremendous amount of legislative power to the executive branch. And now we give them, figuratively speaking, massive bags of money, and then we come back with a letter saying, would you please, this is a legitimate federal use, would you please fund this or grant that? That's not the way it's supposed to happen. But as long as that's the way it is happening, the president has tremendous flexibility in moving money from one area to another, as long as it's for appropriate causes.
Yeah, and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin is insisting that President Trump's executive orders on coronavirus were cleared by the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel. So I don't know where the Democrats are going to go with this. I mean, do you predict what angle they might take?
I predict that the Democrats will do whatever they possibly can to continue as much suffering, violence, and problems in the country leading up to the November election. And if Biden wins, you'll see them drop all of these type of things and work together to give away a lot more money and take away a lot more of our rights. That's what's going to happen to the election anyway.
Yeah, and politically speaking, I don't think it's a good move for the Democrats now that they're planning to challenge President Trump's executive orders. Instead of challenging the orders, they should be getting to work and coming up with ideas, solutions, and working with Republicans on what's next, because obviously the pandemic's not going anywhere anytime soon, and this is something that we're going to be dealing with for some time. Well, Congressman, I'm going to have to leave it here. Thank you so much for your time.
And thanks for paying so much attention to what's going on. You're really on top of it.
Thank you so much.